right, welcome, OpsTalks viewers. This is Andre from Rentley coming at you with our latest episode, and we are so blessed to have Miss Kelly Vickers, who is the Senior Vice President of Asset Management at Acacia Capital. Kelly, welcome to OpsTalks.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And you're our first guest in the new studio with our new wood paneling. How do you like it? Did we do okay?
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Awesome. Well, again, we want to thank you so much for being on the podcast. We really enjoy having real estate operators and thought leaders in the industry and also Rentley clients here. So really appreciate you taking the time to join us and tell us a little bit more about your story.
Well, thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
Awesome. So, Kelly, we'll start at the high level. Tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Acacia Capital.
Okay. Well, as you said, I'm one of two senior vice presidents of asset management, and I oversee our Southern California and our Phoenix markets. We have a presence in Southern California, Northern California, the Pacific Northwest, a small portion in Salt Lake City in Utah, and the Phoenix Metro. And we have historically also been in Las Vegas. I did oversee Las Vegas, but we did sell those assets 2 years ago. But we're looking to get back into Las Vegas, and we're also looking to go into the Denver market. Acacia Capital was established over 30 years ago. We've acquired
the 60s, right? I was reading a couple stats. It's well renowned and well established.
Yeah. So our founding partner was Robert Larson, and in our time, we've acquired over $6 billion in real estate, or over 30,000 units.
Wow.
We raise a capital fund every 2 years, and then we use that capital fund to go out and acquire assets. They're typically a 10-year hold, so we don't have all of those 30,000 units right now. We're at about 12,000 units today. We're in the middle of a capital fundraise. We'll be looking to acquire more assets in the next 24 months after we close this fund. We're a small shop. We've got about 20 team members. We have our asset management division, we have our acquisitions team, and then our Acacia investment committee. So it's a small group, but it's a great group. I really enjoy being on the ownership side. I've been at Acacia for a little over 4.5 years now, and my history has always been in operations. Prior to Acacia, I was a vice president of operations at Ceres Regis Group, and I oversaw parts of Southern California. I had the Inland Empire, San Diego, a little piece of Orange County, and then I also oversaw Phoenix and Denver. So
very cool.
Yeah.
And shout out to the Bailey family, Jeff and Hannah.
Yeah,
they're great folk over at Ceres Regis.
Yeah, I worked with Jeff prior to leaving. So I was with Jeff about 3.5 years. He came to Ceres Regis just as our prior president, Mike Bissell, was getting ready to retire, and Jeff came in and took over those reins from Mike. And I enjoyed working with Jeff very much, but the lure to go to the ownership side was very strong when I was recruited to come to Acacia. Gotcha. And I really enjoy being on the ownership side.
And for those of us that are on like the vendor side, and there's a lot of people that engage with us like at a vendor level, maybe give us a sense of, your role, right? Like, because SVP of asset management sounds like a very complicated and complex role, right? It sounds like you have to own and deliver a lot of roles of responsibility to your org. Maybe give us a sense of that in the prop tech space. What's your day-to-day like?
So my day-to-day, I work with our acquisitions team. My acquisitions officer, her name is Katie, and when she's always looking at things in my markets, I assist her with, we evaluate the assets, we go and look and see what's out there, what's on the market, assist with the underwriting budget, setting the rents, all of those things. And, we shake it out and see if it's something that's going to work for us. And then once we have the assets, then I help to manage the performance of the assets through the third-party management company. So now Whereas at Ceres Regis, I had my clients, that were either the asset managers or the property owners, and I worked in managing their sites and delivering performance for them. And now I'm the client. So I'm on the other
Yeah.
side of the fence. So I work with the third party management company to make sure that my portfolios are performing.
Gotcha. And just give us a sense on either the property management side or the ownership side, or maybe even both. Like, what are those performance metrics that you always look at? What are your North Star metrics for you? Like, hey, this asset's delivering, this management company is delivering, this is a recipe for success. And what are some that may be indicators, hey, we need to do a little bit more work here?
The first one would be, is it performing to performa? What did we underwrite this deal at? What did we say it was going to do? Is it doing it? Is
Right.
it hitting all of the numbers? Are we achieving those underwritten rents? Are we, hitting that income? Are we controlling our expenses the way that we wrote the deal to be? And we also have to look at what happens in the market. You can't, especially when you're on a 10-year hold, you can't predict what's going to happen in the market. For instance, Phoenix. I mean, Phoenix was such a powerhouse performer
Yep.
in the last 5 years, and then 2 years ago it was all of a sudden it hit the brakes, and it was very unexpected because we were really achieving huge trade outs on rents and great renewals on leases, and the market was so strong. And it in 2023 it didn't just slow down. It was I laugh with the VP at AMC LLC, who is our management company that we use, that we didn't just hit the brakes. We went through the windshield. It really slowed down really quickly, and there was such an abundance of supply being delivered, and it's really been a tough market. So,
I remember post-COVID, there was so much focus on Sunbelt as a talk track for investment, right? So you saw post-COVID, Sunbelt, you heard it, right? And so it kind of makes sense where you almost had this bullwhip effect where there was so much supply built out in the Sunbelt, knowing that there was a demand there, that at some point the direction would shift, right? There was an oversupply. Now you have rent rolls decreasing. So it got too hot in the Sunbelt.
It did. It got very hot.
But I think other areas have tried to pick it up. But anyway, that's really interesting to kind of hear. Again, we always hear these titles, so it's good to know, like, how they resonate and how they impact the actual logo. And I'm curious to know, like, one of the things that we were talking about which is a story I think everyone in our industry has, is how they got into it. So the funny thing I always reference is, and I've had this same flaw too, right, with tech, right? You always think, oh, you have to go to school to know tech. And a lot of people think, oh, you have to go to school to go into real estate. And I find that I don't think I've heard a single story in where someone came out of college and said, I'm going to go into real estate. And then they went into real estate. It's always a really interesting path and how they got there. And you are no exception. Tell us a little bit about how you got into real estate in general, because you did not start there.
No, I had no aspirations to be in the real estate industry.
Right.
I owned a medical billing service, and I had a pretty robust clientele, and I was very busy. And my best friend, however, had been in property management since she was 18 years old. And she was working for a developer in the South Bay in Southern California, who created his own property management company to manage his portfolio. And they were having some issues in the Inland Empire with a little portfolio that they wanted to sell, and nobody could keep the accounting straight. And he kept telling her, I need someone just like you in the Inland Empire. And she said, well, I know someone just like me, but I don't think she's interested. She owns her own business, and she's doing great. Well, right about that time, my largest client, two doctors that own this practice, they got into a disagreement, and they were suing each other, and the district attorney stepped in and froze all the assets.
Oh, wow.
And I had all of these payables that they owed me, and I had to go to court to petition to get them paid. And I was so frustrated and fed up. And I
Oh
told my
man.
husband, I just want a regular job. And at that time, my friend said, Kelly, would you be interested in taking on an assignment with my company, like kind of as a consultant, to keep this portfolio of properties accounting straightened out? And I
Mm.
said, yeah, at this point I will. I'll take something else on. I'm done with this medical billing thing. And so I took on the assignment, and within 3 months I was the system coordinator for the whole company.
Oh, wow.
And that's all she wrote. I ended up staying with that company, and then we went on an acquisition spree. So I was doing acquisitions with this company, running due diligences, taking on new properties, setting them up, training teams, and I I don't even know how it happened.
And to give yourself a lot of credit, which I think you're sort of dismissing, right? You made a big shift. You went from medical billing to now running the invoicing and accounting essentially for a real estate operator that was growing. Um, I mean, part of what we like to impart on the viewers of the show is like what what contributed to your success? Like, what do you feel? And I know this, and don't be afraid to speak from the heart, right? What do you feel like is what drove you to be successful? Was it what was that? What are those character traits that you
Well,
feel
I think
exhibited?
anything that I've taken on, I've been driven to be successful. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it well. But I had some really great mentors when I got into this industry.
Hmm.
My first company that I joined, that my friend worked at, their director of operations, his name was Bill Lindborg, and he was a terrific mentor and really was patient with me, took time to educate me on, you know, the whole industry, and really supported me and was very enthusiastic about my growth with that company. And then when the owner of that company, it was called Performance Plus, when he passed away, his family that inherited his whole portfolio didn't want to keep all of the properties. So I found myself going from an acquisitions mode to a dispositions mode. And the companies that are the properties that I had, in the last 2 years onboarded, now we were in disposition mode. So I handled a lot of the disposition tasks and was working with the companies that were purchasing our properties. And one of the companies was Equity Residential. They purchased several of the properties.
Oh wow.
And when we were getting ready to close escrow on two of them, the vice president for equity said something to me like, "Oh, I'll see you next week when the properties close." And I was like, "Well, I don't come with the properties. We still have properties that we're selling."
I
And
love that.
I,
I don't come with the properties. It's
yeah,
not a bundle.
yeah,
Kelly's not part of the subscription.
right. And I think he was surprised. He was like, "Oh," and I said, "What would I do? Like, where would I go?" And he thought about it, and a few days later, he called me and offered me a position. And
That's
that's how I
fantastic.
came to work at Equity Residential.
Wow.
And
What a compliment, by the way. The shock he displayed when you didn't come with it must have been
right,
nice
right.
to see in retrospect.
Yeah. So
And it
then I
got you
ended
into
up,
one of the largest, if not the largest, multifamily ownership groups. That I think who he's very renowned. The
Sam
founder,
Zell.
Sam Zell, right? Sam Zell is very well renowned in the industry. So what a treasure
Yeah,
that you
it
had
was
that opportunity.
it was amazing. When I told Bill that I said, "Bill, I have this opportunity, but I don't want to leave you in the lurch. I know we still have properties that we need to, go through disposition on." And he said, "Kelly, this is an amazing opportunity. You need to take it."
Wow.
So I
And
did.
this was how long ago?
Oh my gosh. They're like 28 years ago.
So
28
you're
years ago.
you're
So
an industry vet. It's safe to say
yes,
because
it's 30 years this year.
the joke I tell people is if you're in real estate, you multiply by 7. It's like dog years. So I say, oh, I've been around for 70 years, but you have me lapped at least almost 3 times. That's
Right.
fantastic. What an incredible, and again, like everyone has that sort of wild journey where they they never expect to be in real estate, but they end up there. So, and it seems like you've stuck around and are happy. So that's fantastic to hear.
I do
Um,
love it. I absolutely love it.
it sounds like a big strength of yours too is just being agile. Like going from medical billing to, something completely different is not, I think a lot of people would resist that change. A lot of people would want to be comfortable in, hey, I'm familiar with this and, let me just find another role. But it seems like you're open to
I
pushing
think
yourself
I
to new
think what
things.
really helped in the transition was that, when I first came to work at Performance Plus, it was just keeping the accounting straight for this portfolio. And so it was numbers. I went from dealing with numbers to dealing with numbers. And, honestly, at the core of it all, property management is all about the numbers.
Yep. Yep. Um, uh, it's great to have a Rently user on here, right? So you're a Rently user. Tell us a little bit about how you got started with Rently and how you use it.
Um, so we
When did
got
our
started.
relationship begin? When did our love story begin?
Our love story began probably 4 years ago.
Oh wow,
So um, I went to the AIM conference and I met with Harrison and
Harry.
yes, and so I got really excited about your product and I took it back to my team and I was like, our other asset managers and I was like, we need to give this a try. And just, things got busy, but Harrison didn't give up on me. He kept in touch with me. He kept calling me, and finally we had a meeting. We're like, okay, we're gonna test this product, and we decided to test it in NorCal. So I called Harrison and I said, Harrison, all of your diligence has paid off. We are ready to roll out Rentley.
Right.
And so I have to give Harrison props. He didn't give up on us, and
Shout
um,
out to Harry.
yeah, so we tested it on a few sites in Northern California, and then I rolled it out in Southern California and Arizona, and it's what really made up my mind about using Rently was I went out, I was shopping some comps with my analyst from Acacia, and some of our competitors had such a clunky experience on the self-guided tour, and it was really frustrating and really terrible. And I said, after my interactions with Harrison and learning about Rentley and seeing what it could do, I said, this is such a better solution and this is what we need to try. And we did, and we love it, and it's been terrific. I mean, we're capturing leases after hours, we're capturing leases on days that our properties are closed, and it just, you know, and going to AIM, you hear all of the market studies, you hear all of the information, all of the intel, and all of the studies that show people want the option of a self-guided tour, even though they might not use it when they're looking at the website or, they're researching where they're going to go and look at apartments. They want that option, even if they don't end up using the self-guided tour, they are attracted to having that option.
Yeah, that's awesome for you to first of all say that. So thank you for the kind remarks. And I think, one thing we're really focused on is that sort of customer centric experience. And yeah, with self-guided touring, um, you have to remember a lot of the people using it's their first time. So having a really engaging and impactful experience is so key. And hats off to, customers like you giving us feedback to improve the product, but also like all the team members that help contribute to that, whether you're product engineering, sales, hats off to you Rentley folks. So that's great to hear that you saw success, and it sounds like customer experience and just user experience was a big driver of Rentley. Out of curiosity, were there any other indicators when you rolled out where you're like, hey, this is working outside of having a great user experience? Was there anything that kind of, and the after hour showings, right? Was there anything else that kind of rung in your ear? You're like, ooh, this is interesting. I like the data that we're seeing here with Brantley.
Um, I think the data is seeing the times when people are coming.
Right.
You're able to track it. You're really able to look at, when are you seeing the most traffic with this self-guided tour program?
Mm,
And, when is it more effective? And, do we need to extend the hours of it? Keep in mind that, I'm I'm managing through the third party management company.
Right.
So, you know, we have to make sure that they're on board with what we want to do too.
Understood. Yeah, no, that's great. It's funny you're telling your story too, because I remember, Rentley started in single family. It's actually 15 years. We're coming up on 15 years. And the value prop was really clear in single family, right? Because it's a bit of a different dynamic, right? You have bespoke properties, there's driving involved, you don't have on-site leasing. And I remember back in 2018 when we started thinking through, hey, how would this work in multifamily? I remember even internally, people were like, oh, this will never work because you already have an on site leasing team. And so our initial solution to kind of pitch it to that user base was, hey, why don't you use it for after hours and weekends, right? You could still have your leasing team in place, but you can actually facilitate tours when you don't have people there. Um, and so it's wild to hear you say that because that was such a gamble back in 2018 when we did that because no one was thinking about that in multifamily. But then, of course, COVID changed that, and just the adoption of technology recently in multifamily has really changed that too. So it's exciting to hear an actual customer say that too.
Well, and in 2020, right as the world was shutting down, I had a brand new luxury lease up opening.
Oh, wow.
So we had to look at what could we do to still facilitate tours. And we did use another self-guided tour operator that it didn't work very well.
Right,
And what ended up happening was our on-site team was kind of doing their own self-guided tour program where they would talk to
right,
somebody on the phone and they would tell them, okay, drive up to the office and I'll have a map out in front for you with a
right,
key. And
right,
then call me and I will talk to you as you go to the unit and as you
right,
walk through the unit. And we were doing all this crazy stuff, like we took cupboard doors off so they could see the inside of the cupboards without having to touch anything. And
oh, wow,
you had the booties at the door where they could put them on and walk through the unit with the booties on and the mask and the gloves. And it
right.
was it was crazy.
Yeah,
So,
a lot of people had to get creative during that time.
right.
But yeah, it just kind of shows you not all self-guided tours are created equal. But hey, glad your team was able to get by and think creatively. That was a tough time for a lot of people.
It
So
was tough. I wish we would have known about Rentley at that time.
well, now you do, and now
I
you're here. So
do.
we're happy to have you. So now you know, uh, I know we had talked a little bit about some of the challenges in real estate now, and I know we briefly spoke about things like I know fraud is something that you see as a rising challenge. I guess my question is, tell us a little bit about your experience just in general, and how you guys at Acacia look at fraud. Like, what's the problem that you see, and maybe give the viewers a sense of that on your level.
Yeah, so honestly, fraud really came to the forefront during COVID when I had
Yeah.
that new lease up.
Hmm.
And we had all of these people applying. They were coming from other metro areas to the Inland Empire where my lease up was. And thank goodness we had a really good manager on site who was catching all of this fraudulent income documents, fraudulent IDs. We did have an ID screening program, so we were catching those fraudulent IDs, but we were really seeing an influx in the fraudulent proof of incomes, the documentation. And we realized we needed a fraud solution. There wasn't a lot of great solutions out there. Um, and we've tried several of them. Since I've been at Acacia Capital, we've continued to see fraud be a problem, and especially in Southern California, it's really been a bigger problem. And every
Hmm.
week I get the leasing numbers, and I see how many leases we had at each property, and then I see how many denials we have, and I see how many denials we're having for fraud, for fraudulent ID, fraudulent proof of income. We have implemented a new, fraud detection program, and it's doing a great job, and
Mm,
it's saving us a lot of money in bad debt from these bad runners moving in.
yeah.
Um, and you know, fraud solutions are definitely a much needed
Yeah,
um, a much needed program in our industry because unfortunately there are a lot of bad actors in there out there. And once they get into your building, especially in California, it is so hard to get them out. In
right,
Arizona, it's pretty fast. You serve them their notice, and within weeks, the constable's there to lock them out. In California, you're looking at 3 to 6 months, sometimes longer, that you have these bad actors
yeah,
in your apartments, and they're racking up bad debt in rent and damages, and then you have your legal fees that you have to spend to get them out, and it's such a frustrating
right.
experience.
Yeah, it's always like a cat and mouse game, right? Like you always have to sort of keep up with newer trends in fraud. I know on the self-guided touring side too, probably the biggest investment we've made is in fraud prevention and detection when you do the self-guided tour, right? Like, hey, we check the selfie, we check the ID, we sort of do an ID match, we run it through AI, we even have support teams that kind of solely focus on fraud, especially with self-guided touring, right? Because that's a
Absolutely.
very sensitive access control ecosystem you want to control. But yeah, your story is resonating because you still have move-in processes, documents that are outside of our control, sometimes outside of your control, and there's so many kind of layers to security that you um, need to sort of think about when, especially in California, right? Because once they move in, it's hard to get them out. So you almost need like a multi-pronged approach, and it's not as easy as flicking a switch on one platform, right? You need to really think through the whole experience, risks, and mitigate accordingly, which is not easy. It's tough, especially when you're managing 18, 19 assets, which is 12,000 units.
Right.
Well, that's good to know that you're being proactive about it. I want to kind of rewind a little bit back. You know someone at Rentley, and I
I
don't think you
do.
knew that when you signed up, and that's how you eventually got us on. That's how you eventually got on the show. But I thought it'd be a funny story point to tell us a little bit about how someone here at Rentley.
So I
Such a
went,
small world, right? By the way,
oh my
like it's so
gosh,
weird that you guys found each other,
it's so
but
crazy. So I went to the Rentley Summit last September,
yep.
and
Which, by the way, is coming up this year. Are you going?
yes, I need to register. I wasn't
Oh,
sure.
you got to register.
I know.
Yeah.
I,
Shout out. This is a plug. If you're coming to the summit, by the time this airs, you got to get your registration up and going. We
yes,
want to see you there,
absolutely.
Kelly. But
I
anyway, go
wasn't
on.
sure if I was going to be able to come with my travel schedule, but I was looking at my schedule last week, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to sign up for the Rentley Summit.
Great.
It was it was great. I absolutely loved it. There was so much great information, and I met some really great contacts in our industry, and it was
Awesome.
such a valuable time spent. So I'm at the Rentley Summit, and I know Harrison, I know Zach, and because I've been working with them
Right.
on the implementation of Rentley in our portfolio. So the last night we went on those little Duffy boats, and I'm on the Duffy boat, and Jared East was sitting next to me. And so we just started chatting, and he asked me, oh, like, well, where do you live? And I said, oh, it wasn't a bad drive for me. I came from Corona, which is in Southern California. And he
By
said,
by by the way, Jared East is our vice president of product, right? So sorry, I wanted to layer that on.
yes.
So you're both from
So
Corona.
yeah, so he goes, "Oh, I grew up in Corona." I said, "Oh, where?" And so we started chatting, and I said, "What school did you go to?" And he told me Santiago High School, and I said, "Oh, well, you probably know my kids, Tyler and Trevor Vickers." He goes, "Yes, I know Tyler and Trevor Vickers." And I was like, part of me is like, "Uh-oh, is this going to be a good story or a bad
Right.
story?"
Could go either way.
Could go either way. And so it turns out that he knows my daughter-in-law, who's married to my son Trevor. He was great friends with her. He used to go to her house all the time. Apparently, Jared had been in my house working with my youngest son and his band, recording music. And I mean,
Wow.
it turned into this whole thing. He was like, "Oh yeah, I worked with Trevor recording for his band." And I said, "Well, you were probably at my house
Oh
in
my
our
goodness.
downstairs office that Trevor kind of took over and turned into a recording studio." And
That's
it,
great.
it was just a great story. So of course we had to take a selfie and then I had to send it to my kids and my kids are like, "No way, where are you? How did you end up with
That's
Jared?"
such a small world. And you know what's funny too is that experience. By the way, who do you think did the audio setup? It was Jared. Jared worked with Miguel and Rodolfo because he actually has a degree in audio engineering. So it actually played into the Ops Talk. So isn't that funny though? What a
Who
small
knew
world.
when he was 16 years old recording in my home office.
So you helped shape Jared to the point where we could even have Ops Talks. I actually should be thanking
Exactly.
you. Yeah, you helped make Ops Talks possible.
Who knew?
Who knew? And so another funny story too. We're doing pretty good on time. We'll have a couple more questions and then we'll wrap. I think we talked a little bit about this before the podcast. I was kind of making the joke with our producer. I was like, the hardest part of the podcast is like a couple minutes before, right? And we're talking about, things that made you successful. And you sort of shared with me that you used to be terrified of public speaking. Tell us a little bit about that and how you sort of mitigated that, you know, weakness of yours that you mentioned before.
So when prior to Sarah Regis, I was with a company called Lewis Operating Corp, and I was with the Lewis Apartment Communities division, and I was overseeing their new construction lease ups. And Lewis is a family company, and every
Okay.
year they have the company breakfast where everyone in the company from all of the properties, all of the divisions comes to the company breakfast, and we hear all of the leaders of the company talk about the vision for the company for the year, etc. Well, Randall Lewis was in charge of multifamily communities. And so I'm at this company breakfast, just sitting there enjoying my breakfast, listening to everyone talk. And all of a sudden, Randall Lewis is standing next to me and says, "I would like Kelly Vickers to talk about customer service," and
He
hands me
just
a
threw you in the
microphone.
spotlight.
Hands me a microphone and had me
Oh
stand
my,
up. And I
oh my
gave a
God.
speech on customer service. And this is so crazy. I have no recollection of anything I said.
You
Nothing.
blacked out mentally.
I apparently talked for 5 or 10 minutes and then I sat down. Our
Wow.
VP of property management was sitting next to me and he goes, "Oh my gosh, Kelly, that was awesome." He goes, "You used Randall's buzzwords." He goes, "That was such a great speech." He goes, how long did you have to prepare for that?" And I just looked at him and I was like, 1 minute? I have no idea. And I told him, I said, "Mark, I don't even know what I said." And he goes, "You're
Wow.
kidding." And I said, "No." And he goes, "You did a great job." I had people from other divisions emailing me and asking me for a copy of my speech.
Wow.
And I was like, "I don't have one."
So you did great.
Apparently. And so I told myself I would never be in that position again. And I signed up for Toastmasters the next week.
Wait, so hold on a second. I thought this story would go the opposite direction where I remember one time I got up to speak and I nearly blacked out. Like I almost fainted.
Oh,
You're saying,
physically.
oh yeah, but you're
But see, I
saying,
mentally blacked out.
yeah, but you stayed up. You actually got up there, delivered a great performance, and you still sought to better yourself.
Oh, because I didn't ever want to be in that position where I couldn't remember what I said, where
Right.
I just, completely blacked out on everything that happened. I wanted to be in a position where I wouldn't panic, where I
Mm,
would feel a little more confident and a little more, in control of myself and my thoughts. So
wow.
Toastmasters really helped me with that. And it was great because some of the people in our corporate office um belonged to Toastmasters. So they had
Okay.
the Toastmasters meeting in one of our meeting rooms once a month. And I was like, "Okay, I'm signing up."
Wow. Any hot takes from Toastmasters you could share with the audience? What were some maybe a key one or two key takeaways that helped you become a better speaker?
It helps you not to go down rabbit holes and lose the plot and go off on, you know, go completely off the reservation. Um, because when
So
you're,
I could use basically what you're saying is I could use Toastmasters
yes,
because I
Andre,
do that a lot.
would you like to go to
Yeah. Is this a
Toastmasters?
pitch for Toastmasters?
Um,
Understood.
Yeah, I mean, it's just because when you're doing your assignments in Toastmasters and you give your speeches, they have this box out in front of you. You're at the podium and directly in your line of sight is this box with basically a traffic light and it has, the green, the yellow, and the red. So the green means go, start your speech. The yellow means start wrapping it up, and the red means you're done. Yeah.
Hey, got to manage your.
Yeah, and it really it became such a valuable thing for me because I was the board chair for the Inland Empire division of the California Apartment Association. So for 2 years, so I had to chair events and I had to get up and give speeches and, you know, talk about the sponsors and the program and everything. And it really helped me overcome that fear of getting up in front of hundreds of people and giving these, talks and these speeches and being able to stay on track and not lose my plot as I'm going through my script and those things.
That's incredible. Yeah, definitely recommend. I didn't take a formal course. I just kind of learned by fire, but I think it's great that you bettered yourself, and I probably should sign up too. Sometimes I catch myself drifting. That's why I have to write bullet points to make sure I don't drift.
I think you're
Speaking of,
doing great. I don't know.
okay,
I don't know that
well,
you need Toastmasters.
thank you. It couldn't hurt. But and meanwhile, Miguel is flashing a yellow light in the background. So I know your time is valuable. We just have two more questions. So
Sure.
outside of work, tell us a little bit about, and maybe any hobbies, family that help you sort of balance your workload. Are there any things, hobbies, passions that you find bring you meaning and mitigate maybe some of the stresses at work?
Yeah, I like to travel. Um,
Hmm.
yeah,
Okay.
my husband and I like to travel. In August, we're going to London and Dublin for 2 weeks, and
Awesome.
yeah, and we're actually going with my youngest son and his family for the London half of it because they have to go to England for a wedding. And he said, "Hey, Mom, we're going to go early and we're going to do some sightseeing. Why don't you and Dad come?" So
Amazing.
yeah,
That's
we're going to
incredible.
go and have some fun with them in England before we head over to Ireland.
Great.
And we have a boat that we like to go out on the lake. We
Nice.
Yeah, so we go boating, we travel, like to go to concerts.
Wonderful.
We have a group of friends that we have dinner with almost every Friday night. We call it like our Friday night dinner club, and
Nice.
so we have our friends that we socialize with on a regular basis, and just try to unplug from the whole property world. Um,
Nice.
our core social group, there is no one in property management in it. I
You
have
check out. You
I
check out
check
of
out.
work.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. Yeah, because then when you have friends that also do the work, you know what happens is you end up talking about work on your
right,
time off, and then you never disconnect.
right. And I do have those friends that I see, socially, and we do things socially, but
Of
as
course.
far as my core social group that we interact with on a weekly,
Yeah.
monthly basis, none of them are in property management.
No, that's great. And so boating, is it true the acronym BOAT stands for break out another thousand? Like I hear it's like you always have to maintain the boat. And then there's the old joke, I don't know if you've heard it, the two best days of a boater's of a boater's hobby are the day they buy the boat and they sell the boat. Like, what's your stance on that?
Well, we're we've been very lucky. We've had a couple of boats and they've been great boats. And
Good.
yeah, we absolutely love our boat, and our family loves our boat, like the kids and, their wives and stuff. They'll all come and we'll all go boating together. But there's just something about, being out on the lake and being out on the water, and
Yeah.
you have no cell reception and you're just like, it's just very zen, and
Yeah.
I absolutely love it.
Awesome. Um, well, last question. Um, you get any words of wisdom? Anything, 30 seconds, pitch whatever you want. You got 30 seconds. Tell us anything you want to promote or anything coming up exciting or any words of wisdom, whatever you want.
I mean, if there are investors out there looking for a great investment, contact Acacia Capital. We're raising a new fund right now, so you still have time to get into our 2025 fund. Um, I mean, honestly, my words of wisdom are, property management is an absolutely fantastic industry. We are tasked with providing people homes. And always remember that. Don't lose sight of the fact that you are a huge contributor to someone's life, and treat that with respect.
Yeah, 100%. We definitely need more housing, and it's good that what we have to always remember what we do is to help match renters with great homes. So that's a great call out, and we need to ground ourselves in that. That's a great objective that you're sharing. So, yeah, Kelly, thank you so much for being a part of the show and being on Ops Talks. Really appreciate it. And to our viewers, listeners, if you've listened this far, we appreciate you tuning in. Again, Kelly Vickers, thank you so much from Acacia Capital. And remember to like and subscribe to Ops Talks. We are starting season 2 right now with our new wood background. And thank you again, Kelly. Appreciate your
Thank you.
time. I know
Thank you
it's
for having
valuable.
me. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Kelly, and we're signing off. Thanks again.
Thank you.